Welcome to the third inter-university debate. This is the third group and the second university in this third group. We have had debate with the first group and the second group. The first group, we had Makerere University, Kabale University, Kampala University, and Bugema University. In the second group, we had IUIU, Chambogo University, Ndeje University, and Uganda Pentecostal University. In this third group, last week, we had Mountains of the Moon University. So today with us, we have panelists from Bishop Stuart University. I'm your moderator for today's debate. My name is Lakie Gender Fancy. I'm an advocate, I'm a lecturer, and a tax consultant. Our topic for today's debate is the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. What is the state of Uganda's education? Today, Thursday, 11th November 2021, the debate is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and it is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. So we are having a panel of 4 panelists from Bishop Stuart University. So when I mention your name, kindly switch on your video and wave to us. We have Miss Mirembe Samarie, who is a student pursuing Bachelor of Laws degree from Bishop Stuart University. Yes, Samarie, okay, we are hoping you're with us. And then we have Kamugisha Andrew, a student of Bishop Stuart University pursuing Bachelor of Laws degree. Yes.
Thank you so much, the moderator. I'm Kamugisha Andrew from Bishop Stuart University.
Thank you, Andrew. Thirdly, we have Atumanya Doris, who is a student of Bishop Stuart University still pursuing Bachelor of Arts with Education.
Thank you so much, the moderator. I'm Doris Atumanya, a student at Bishop Stuart University.
Thank you, Doris, and you're welcome to the panel. And last but not least, we have Sigire Adonia, a student of Bachelor of Laws. Yes, still Bishop Stuart University.
Thank you. Thank you so much, moderator. I'm Sigire Adonia, student Bishop Stuart University.
Okay. Thank you so much. Like I mentioned earlier, our topic for today's debate is the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. What is the state of Uganda's education? Now, to introduce this topic, Uganda's education system consists of pre-primary, primary, secondary, and universities. It even stretches to tertiary institutions. So there has been so many topics that has been associated with Uganda's education system that we would like to unpack today. We have had questions of the youth unemployment. We have had questions about the closure of schools due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have had introduction of online studies as an alternative. Is it the best option for Uganda? We have had some people suggest that Uganda should have more tertiary institutions so that we can have more job creators than job seekers. Is it the best way to go? And then we have had questions lately of school fees being charged very highly by schools, especially private schools. All these are questions that we are going to answer in today's debate. That's why our topic is the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. What is the state of Uganda's education? So this is the structure of our debate today, our dear panelists. This is how our debate is going to run. We are going to have opening statements from each panelist, and the opening statements will last 3 minutes each. So kindly time yourself so that you don't use less time or more time. So you're going to use 3 minutes to give us your opening statement. And in that opening statement, you're also going to answer a question from me. After that, we are going to have one general question that is going to be posed to all the panelists. Then after that, we are going to have specific questions, also called follow-up questions that will be directed to the different panelists from me. And then lastly, you will give us your closing remarks. So we are going to start straight away with our opening statements. And I would like to start straight away with Mirembe Samarie to give us her opening statement. And in your opening statement, the question that I'm directing to you is, what comes on your mind when we talk about education? Samarie, you have the floor. Give us your opening statement.
All right, thank you, Modulator. Well, when you talk about education, I think it is actually the process of acquiring skills, ideas, and facts about certain things. But in our situation today, many people think actually education is mainly about going to class, and then from primary you go to secondary, from secondary you go to university. But in my own understanding, I think education actually has many things in which it entails: formal education, informal education, as well as non-formal education. But in Uganda, we basically talk about education in a way that we don't even understand exactly what it is about. So in my opinion, I really think that it is about the skills we acquire from our families. It is the skills that we acquire from our churches as well as from our schools. Now, talking about education, many people will actually think it is, actually they mistake it for literacy. In Uganda, people have not been able to acquire skills, but rather ideas. And they actually think it is enough for Ugandans. They actually think that is enough they have acquired out of education. But we do not see what happens after that education, after acquiring ideas. They don't even consider what they learn from homes. They actually think what they learn from school is better than what they learn from home. In these cases whereby students actually think that going to university, going to schools, going to primary, going to secondary level is actually good for them, not knowing that what is required in field is more than ideas. What is required in field is actually the skills that they are able to get from the ideas they already have. So to me, education is basically about skills and ideas. You have the skills, you have the ideas, and you will know how to put them in skills, or you will know how they operate in the field that you will go in after that education, the school education. So basically, it means that they are the things that we learn from our homes, that is to say farming, that is to say peeling, or even anything else, because after learning how to peel, you automatically know how to work in a hotel. They are skills that we shall acquire from our churches, whereby there are churches which you will find they call the youth to train them how to make cakes. They are the skills that we shall acquire from our elders, as well as the ideas that we shall acquire from our schools. That is what I understand by education. It does not stop on the ideas, which many people think it stops on, but it goes to the skills, it goes to the practicals, basically. That is what I understand by education.
Thank you so much, Samarie, for giving us an opening statement and basically telling us what comes on your mind when we talk about education. I would like to now move to Andrew. So Andrew, the way this topic is framed is in a way that the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. So my question is the foundation of Uganda the education of its youth?
Thank you so much, the moderator. This is a very intriguing topic. One, when someone says that the foundation of every state is the education of its youth, I believe yes, was one, we believe that the youth have acquired a lot of new skills in the area of education. And why do I believe that the youth have a much prior attitude to the foundation of every state? I'll just take you back when how education was brought into Uganda. This was through the missionaries who had brought advocates of teaching Africans on how to read and write. But then the Africans kept on the same system that of reading and writing and didn't put the advancement of the practicability. And that's why you find even up to date that we have very many youth who cannot do very many creative jobs, but they are seeking jobs than they are creating jobs. So what am I trying to insinuate? That this education system has created more of a narrative of job seekers than creators. So why do I believe that the youth have the zeal or the energy to take on the mantle and also why are they regarded to be the foundation of our state? One is that they have the energy because every time when someone is being groomed, people are advancing in skills. For example, a youth that was born in the 90s is different from the one who's born in the 20th century. One is that they have acquired different skills from technology on how they adapt and also solve issues. I'll just take in three categories of how I see the youth being the fundamental value in Uganda. One, from the perspective side of the political side, one, we see that the youth have acquired the skills in leadership. One, I can give an example of the recent election, Bob Wine, when he contested. We felt that the youth felt that Bob Wine presented the ideas and the problems of unemployment, issues of insecurity. They felt that he was a person who was representing their voices in a manner they well understood compared to the elder, like, for example, West and also the 70s. Then when you go to the economic perspective, why I believe that the youth have a huge say in what they should be doing is that one is that they are creative. You find people are doing what we call small business. For example, when you go around universities, you find people with different projects like juices and what. This is the education they have acquired from schools that pushes them to go outside and also create something outside of the world. So why do I believe that the youth have a huge impact? But who should be blamed for the youth in Uganda? If the education is very poor, as I'm summarizing, if the education in Uganda is very poor, one is that the youth won't have the man or won't have the capabilities to push on the advancements they feel they desire in a country. Now, when you have an education that is corrupt and its bureaucracy is not verified to the fruitfulness of its nature, one, you find students who are half-baked. For example, in education, you find that students are not getting the actual content that should be delivered. One, even we shall find that the very many youths who have not acquired education due because of the poor infrastructure in communication and also delivery of resources, you find the youth don't have the equal opportunities presented to them. So what would be my suggestion, and why do I believe that we should still regard the youth as the paramount one, is that we believe that the youth have a huge much energy to provide and also provide new ideas from the new education system that the country is providing. Through that, then we believe that they have a huge obligation to provide to our country and also provide more resources that we need to use for the future.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that brilliant submission. I would like to now move to Doris. So Doris, I would like you to give this debate a basis. So what is the state of education of the youth in Uganda today? Yes, Doris, it's time for you to give us your opening statement. And in your opening statement, you are expected to give us the state of education of the youth in Uganda today. What is the state? Okay, as Doris prepares, let me move to Adonia. As Doris prepares to answer that. So Adonia, what is the state of Uganda's education system?
Thank you so much, modulator. Now, the state of Uganda's education system goes around to be formal and informal. We've had the transfers from the time of informal education, typical informal education, the status quo of both informal and formal education. Why is that? What does that mean? We had the time where we had a limited number of people going to schools. We had literally home teaching, where we would basically teach their children how to do home chores, and that was all. And generally, when colonialism came, we saw the introduction of formal education, where schools were introduced. People started going to schools. Still, the day-to-day when we see that actually formal education is now at a point overlapping the formal education. Now, what is the state of the education system today? We realize that one has to go through kindergarten, one has to go through primary level, one has to go through high school, and the education system is a competitive system. That is what I would like to table now. The education system basically today, not until 2019, when partly it came, the curriculum came to be changed. We had typically a system that was teaching or was equipping learners with skills only. Sorry, was equipping learners with the knowledge of doing things, not the skills actually on how to do things. So you realize that with such an education system, now we are in a competitive world and the products of the education system have to compete on the international market. Realize that the Uganda's because we didn't have the skill. We had the knowledge of how to do things, but without the skill, we could have the knowledge of how to, without the knowledge of how to make these things that assemble cars, ladies, our dear modulator. Now you realize that the status quo in the education system leaves a very big gap of development, economic development, industrial development, where the education system actually now puts us on pressure. Is it the question and states the question and leaves us without an answer on the question: is the education system able to sustain and actually fund and actually now position to enable the economic status quo of our country to be developed? That is why the challenge is. And with that question being stake, it puts the education system at an satisfactory position where we have a lot to answer, where we have a lot to feed within our education system modulated. So that is the status quo. That is what is happening in the education system. We need to look at how can we energize, how can we empower, how can we give these people, or give these learners the skills that they need to do things, not the skills, not the mindset, but now look at how to equip these learners with the skills. Thank you so much, I submit.
I would like to move back to Doris. So Adonia has given us the state of the education system generally in Uganda today. So Doris, we would like you to narrow it down to the youth. What is the state of education of the youth in Uganda today?
Okay. Thank you so much, the modulator. Only that I want to confirm if I'm heard.
Yes, Doris, we can hear you.
Okay, I am in an unstable place because it's raining. It's too rainy here, and if I'm not clear, then please let me know. Regarding the discussion today, and so what is the state of the education of the youth in Uganda today? You basically look at basing on the statistics that a bigger percentage of the people in the country they are the youth, and those are the main people that receive education. I would want to say that the state of the education of the youth is really poor regarding to what is happening. Currently, when you look at COVID-19, you realize that it is failing them more, not even from how it was before COVID. So I want to say that in most schools, let's say institutions and universities, the youth have been given an opportunity to do online studies. But of course, as online studies, it's not worth it for someone to go in school 3 years down the road and you go out when you don't know certain things. Simply, they're looking at online studies too. And in that, I want to look at the issue that most youth in Uganda today, they don't afford education because of reasons that they cannot look at the school dues. It is too high for them. If you consider online studies, they need a lot to do that. So it becomes a problem to all of them because they don't manage that, which makes it a state of their education very poor. In Uganda today, we have most schools that teach ideas. And among the youth, those ideas do not help, which becomes certainly a problem because at the end of the day, they will not have any skill for them to work on. And when you look at the employment capacity of the youth after they are studying, it's also really poor because most institutions, most areas, they ask for someone who has been working for 5 years. If you have that experience, you'll be the only person to be employed. So it becomes very, very unfair and poorer the more for saying that the youth should go more with studying ideas, not skills, and whereby it comes in to be like most in Uganda today, we should have more tertiary institutions other than having these universities that teach ideas, and ideas which are going to help the youth at the end of the day. So Stephen said that the state of the education of the youth in Uganda today is really poor because of the above stated reasons. And my opening statement, I would want to say that since COVID came in, it has been unstable, and you cannot tell of which or when education is going to start, and we cannot trust whatever that the president brought out, because if it gets worse, then the schools will be more closed. So you realize that we need more tertiary and more institutions to teach them about the skills. So as in what a student knows will be very easy for them to do it, even when they don't go to school, but they have that skill in themselves. It can be very, very easy. And those that don't manage universities and those bigger places of education, they can also run to institutions and have the best of the education. Thank you so much. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Doris. You raised a number of issues that we will get back to at a later time. Let me get back to Samarie. I'm going to pose the general question right now, and I'll start with Samarie, and each of you have 2 minutes for the general question. So, we'd like to look at what are the gaps in Uganda's education system. So, over to you, Samarie.
Please pardon the question. My network is poor. I'm breaking somehow.
Okay, the question is, what are the gaps in Uganda's education system? Okay, Samarie, we cannot hear you. As you sort out network issues, we can't hear you. As you sort out network issues, let's shift to Andrew. As you sort out your network, just kind.
What is the question again?
The question is, what are the gaps in Uganda? What are the gaps in Uganda's education system? Okay, let me have Andrew, as Samarie will come back later on. So Andrew, kindly submit on the gaps in Uganda's education system.
Thank you so much. You bring a very interesting point that I thought it wouldn't come on board. Now, what are the gaps that we're talking about in the education system? One, I'll just begin it from a larger perspective or a larger scope of view. One, the mode of delivery or how our students are taught. One, that we have more of a theoretical bit and also have what we call topics that are not necessary for us to study. You find someone is studying history, then at the end of it all, you find who doesn't want to become a historian. So the gap in between that I'm trying to address is, why don't we teach our fellow youths the particular things they're interested in? Like, for example, in China, they train their kids, if you want to become an electrician, you go in the field of physics and also other subjects related to electricity. So the gap in Uganda is that they do not address the specific needs of the students, but address the wide scope, and which are very too huge and many for someone to specify. By the time they particularly concentrate in a particular field, that means the time has already gone, and it's not even easier for them to pursue their dream desires. Another gap is how the other gap is more of the long duration in school. Like my fellow panelist Adonia had said, you find someone has to study kindergarten 1, kindergarten 2, kindergarten 3, then baby class, then top class, primary 7 years. You find someone is spending all their entire life in school. And what is the gap is that even when they are still studying, they are not given another time for creative activities. If you look at the other co-curricular, other countries, how they practice their education, is that even though students are studying, they still have other time or other durations, other studies where they can train or study, or where they can invest their time in their particular fields. For example, in other schools, you find that whereas students have activities, they stop at 3, then from 3 to 4, if you want to become a musician, you go for music classes. If you want to become an actor, you go for drama classes. That means that the student not only is he acquiring the knowledge for the studies that he wants to go for, but he's also acquiring the desires or the passions for which he wants to practice in future if, for example, the sector of education fails. Another gap in the education sector is that, one, we have not created much avenues for the employment opportunities for the students that we are putting out. You well know that in Uganda, the problem is that we have very many education students that are always put out in the field of the academic arena. But then you ask yourself, of the many people that are released, the retirement age in Uganda is still high. What is the problem in this scope? That you find that the retirement age is at 60. But then each and every year, students are being released in the economic environment, which we feel that is not suitable. Because one, if you're saying that the retirement age is high, but then the recruitment age of in the economic sector is still low, then there's what we call a gap of where are they going to be employed. That's why even we have a narrative of what next after education. So another gap is that we have lacked mentorship and skilling sector in the education system. One is that students no longer study for their passions or for their dream desires. They study to satisfy the desires of their parents. You find a student at campus studying a course because the parent told her or him that he wants a doctor in the family. You find a student is not studying to pursue their own desired goals, but is pursuing the desires of the family or the clan. Then what is the problem with the teachers now? The gap in the education system with the teachers is that they focus on the large scale. There's no interpersonal dialogue between a student and a teacher. They interact with the whole interface of the students, and majorly they don't interact on a personal basis with the student to find out whether each student has understood. And even the assessment is also based, the assessment, also another gap that I want to also address among the teachers is that the style of assessment, because I believe that exams cannot really generally assess the level of knowledge of someone he or she has acquired in a school. I believe that there should be other assessment forms on how to generate and also understand whether someone has acquired the necessary skills or not. So I believe that in the long run, there are very many gaps, but then we must now tackle from the fundamental gaps. One, the first gap was the lack of mentorship programs. Two, that the lack and will of parents support the dreams of their own kids. Three, that the long duration of students in schools, that at the end of it all, they have not studied the practical bit of it all, but even the small time they could have used to create for their personal avenues and also hobbies is also invested in other avenues of education, which limits the wide scope of studying and also research. Hello.
Okay. Thank you so much for that brilliant submission. I would like to move to Adonia. Do you have Adonia? Yes, I would like to move to Adonia. What are the gaps that you could add on what has already been submitted by Andrew? The gaps in Uganda's education system. Okay, as we wait for Adonia, let me shift to Doris. Okay, we have Adonia with us. So what are the gaps in Uganda's education? Okay. So let's have Doris then. So Doris, what are some of the other gaps in Uganda's education system that you would like to add on what Andrew has so far submitted?
Am I clear?
Okay, yes, Adonia, you're clear. So you can now, did you get the question?
I beg your pardon.
What are the gaps in Uganda's education system? Andrew has discussed some of the gaps and would like to hear from you. What are some of Uganda's education system?
Am I clear?
Yes, you are. Okay, we don't have Adonia anymore. Doris, are you with us?
Hey, I am here. Am I clear?
Yes, you are. So what are some of the gaps in Uganda's education system?
Okay, you can allow me submit without a video because I'm temporarily not in a stable place. But what are the gaps in Uganda's education system? The first gap that we have here is the curriculum of the system. Now you come to realize that before COVID, the curriculum was changed, and it was changed to very, very new things. One, you realize that it's very hard for people to attain in the curriculum. Even the one that we have currently, it's not fair because I had said that we need to not to teach ideas right now. We need to look at the skills. What these people have is what we need to best look at. How is the curriculum a problem? The curriculum becomes a problem because even when the new curriculum was introduced, it is very and still very hard for people that for ministry that introduced the new curriculum to come in and teach it very well, because you realize that before schools were all closed, they had started teaching how the new curriculum is going to be used, and it was really a problem. If it can be developed the way of how they're going to teach this new curriculum, it would be an added advantage. I'd say that mostly the gap that we still have in the education system is the evaluation and the assessment. How do they evaluate these people at the end of the day? You realize that most schools, they do exams, yes, but whatever comes out shows that they didn't do those exams themselves. In this, you realize that most schools have papers even before they do, especially at the end of the year. Those examinations. So it means that the evaluation and the assessment of everything becomes a problem in the system, because even when they evaluate and they have assessed and they have brought out these people that copy or cheat exams, still it is recurring. It means that there is a problem in the process of evaluating. There is a problem in the process of punishing. So as to ensure that this stops, that becomes a gap in the system. Another gap that we have in the education system in Uganda currently is the management. How are schools managed? You realize that from the top leaders, from the Ministry of Education, still there is corruption, there is bribery. So it becomes a challenge to most of the schools that don't have the capacity to bribe and maybe get what is better. In Uganda today, we realize that we have private schools and government schools. To some extent, private schools are better than government schools, and to another extent, government schools are better. Why? Because of corruption. And that means management becomes a problem, because these schools are supposed to be managed in a better way and the same manner. So as these people, every student, every youth, every child in school can receive the same thing that the other person is receiving in another school, you realize that even the gap that we have in education are the courses that we are studying. You sit at the university, you're studying a course, and at the end of your 3, 4, 5 years, you don't have anywhere to go. It means that the gap and the problem that we have in this is the courses that these people are doing. It would be a better option if these courses are eliminated and you do a course whereby at the end of the day you will have the capacity, you will have a chance, and you have the capability to stand in and do a job. Most especially, look at schools. When you're going to apply in a school, some schools will ask for a 2-year experience, a 5-year experience, and you're just a fresh graduate. You're from school, you finished your 3 years. You're from a university, you finished your 3 years, and you don't have any experience. So that becomes a challenge, meaning that some courses are there, but they're not to be helpful. And that stands in to be a gap in the education system. Thank you so much. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Doris. I would like to move back to Samarie. We have heard from Andrew and Doris, who have submitted on some of the gaps that the education system in Uganda is facing today. Do you have any submission on that question? Feel free to
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't get what they said, but I also submit on what I think is the main gaps. Maybe don't relate to them, but about the problem with the schools teaching theory rather than practical skills. And basically that is one of the problems that we have. You realize even the well-doing countries in the education system actually teach vocational studies. Take an example of Kenya, which is here, our neighbor. So I think the problem runs from the curriculum to the schools themselves. Now, on my submission, I'll actually mainly talk about the curriculum, which is somehow not so good as the other countries have their curriculum, which actually makes their education so effective. Now, I gave a case point of Kenya, whereby their curriculum actually is competence-based curriculum, whereby they will actually have 6 years in the in the elementary schools, that is to say primary schools, and then going to secondary, they will just be 4 years, and then to university 4 years. And then what do they do in this, at a higher education level? What they do is actually they teach mathematics, they major in mathematics and English, and then they also do vocational studies, which is actually in Uganda. That is side, they only concentrate on the theoretical side, which is really a problem in Uganda. So believing that if they actually concentrate on the vocational studies, it would be better. It would be a better idea to set people for the future, not teaching theory, which will actually not be important to that jobs. So going to schools themselves in favor of the constitution, but the problem is, the government actually acknowledges that education is a human right, even when they are doing their programs. Take an example of the 2040 vision, where we actually talk about education as actually a basic need, I mean, as an imperative sector in the country, but they actually don't concentrate on it. For example, I told you that it goes from curriculum to the schools to the government. They actually don't even concentrate on it to the extent that they will not even mind about it when they are making a national budget. We shall see the education system was actually used to have 11 point something percent of the national budget, but now it was lowered to 10 point something national budget, as compared to actually increases from 20% to 20. Is the problem with Uganda? It is actually acknowledging the fact that education is needed, but they're actually not putting enough effort to make it a good kind of system. So now going to the schools themselves, we all know that they think that everyone is supposed to attend schools, and what is happening in the UPE and the USE, which they actually introduced to help the disadvantaged people. We shall see that in the USE, UPE, we believe that now these people that attend these schools are actually disadvantaged, and so are supposed to get all the needs, all the tuition from the state. But now what is happening, though, these are the schools whereby, you will get there, they pay for you tuition or even school fees, but what shall be required? They won't allow you to go to school without your uniform. And now what is required? It means the parent will actually be expected to provide that uniform to the student.
Okay. Thank you, Samarie, for that good insight. And you brought out so many points that we will get back to. Would like to hear from...
I'm sorry. May I continue my submission?
Yes, you can summarize.
Yes, please. Can I proceed with my submission?
Yes, please do.
All right. I was talking about what is happening in the UPE and USE schools. Yeah, well, I say that they are the schools for the disadvantaged, but what is required of them is, it is as though they are not disadvantaged. Now, what is happening? There is inequality in the education system, whereby you find the government schools as well as the private schools are doing well because they have high quality teachers. Whereas for the UPE and USE schools, they will actually get them low-trained teachers, which will affect us in future, because you realize that even the people who come from those schools are not competent enough to go in the job world. Then another problem is with, another problem is actually with the national budget, whereby they do not consider the education system, which is more imperative than any other sectors, because we said, it is the foundation of every state. But in Uganda, it is recognized as the foundation, and yet what is actually done does not show that it is the foundation of every state. Then the other problem is with the curriculum, because I think we are finding hard time. I think the problem in Uganda is actually, it goes back to the government, whereby they are failing to benchmark to know what the other countries that are doing well in education are doing, but they actually think what they're doing is best for them. That's why you find that in while checking on sources, will actually you that US has good education, but they will still tell you that Japan has the most intelligent and creative youth. This is because they are comfortable with the kind of education they have, but they're not even willing to know what the others are doing to make their students or the youth so competent in that they can even go to the world job market and they know they can get jobs comfortably. So I think the problem is another problem is with the time. I think it is much of time wastage, whereby you will find that people are learning what is not actually needed in the job world. For instance, the other time I was watching on YouTube the Mountains of the Moon debate. Someone said that I studied St. Paul and Seaway, but I don't even know how helpful it has been in all my endeavors. Yeah. So that is the same thing that is happening in Uganda. We shall study the geography, we shall study the Swahili, but we don't know what to do with it. I mean, I think the education system should somehow be adjusted, whereby someone needs to concentrate more. I mean, if they are to make someone understand what exactly they are good at, they may actually reduce the 4 years of of all level to 2 years, whereby they will actually know that in these 2 years, someone will be able to know what they are good at or what they are bad at. But I also think that the primary level is also enough for someone to establish what they are good at, because it actually entails all the 11 subjects that you will end up being in secondary, because there are only 4 which actually that cover all the 11 subjects. So I think it is more of time wastage. So the problem is with the curriculum, with the budget, as well as the schools themselves, and it is mainly the problem of the government. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. We would like to move to Adonia on this question. So what do you think are some of the gaps in Uganda's education system that you can add on to the ones that have already been given? And please feel free to disagree with the previous panelists. Adonia, you have the floor.
So much. Before I go any further, I would like to maybe request for the panelists to speak. Let us not include the video thing, because it strains the network this side where it is raining, and it becomes hard. Because thank you. Now, what are the gaps that we are realizing in the education system? One of the things that the panelists have not talked about is the access of the dropouts in Uganda's education system. Now, the question is, why are people dropping out of education? Now, go to primary, go to secondary, basically there. Why are people actually dropping out? In Kamugisha region, we realize that actually more than 4% every year girls drop out. Why? Because of various reasons, or the gaps that I'm being to tackle. Maybe some of them have not been tackled. Now, I'll talk about facilitation. Realize in Uganda, though we put much into education, on the ground. Yeah, much money is made, much money is by the government, but those really things being put into implementation, because you realize the rate of corruption is so high. I'll begin with scholarships. We have the government scholarships. Not until this is cleared in the air that we need people that are supposed to attain access scholarships, attain them. If it is for the people that cannot afford school dues, but they can actually compete academically, let them be, because we have laid back. For example, universities, secondary schools, people of the rich states, the so-called state scholarships. Who attend the state scholarships? The people of the sons of the ministers, daughters of the ministers. What the down, the grassroots people? How are they dying? It means that these people are not attaining these scholarships. And the more these people fail to attain scholarships, trust me, the education system will not take any more lead, because gaps are vivid. Every time we talk about the education system, that is on facilitation. Go to schools, realize how hard is it for girls, for the government to actually give. Why are girls dropping out of school? Challenges of menstruation, challenges of they are not actually fit in public. That is what they claim to say, but it is real, because they have not been facilitated. How expensive is it? If the government actually can fund more things that are irrelevant and not a priority, why not fund actually the education system, and these small things be cleared out and people attain education? Now, we are talking about another cause, or the gaps in the education system. I'll talk about I'll talk about something that has not been tackled, hands-on system. Now, if we are to see an improvement and a step taken in the education system of Uganda, can we improvise? Can we advocate for hands-on skills? I'll ask myself, I've been in the education system for now about 18 years, but I've not, in 1 year, I've studied Canadian prayer, but where have I done it? For example, where have I done, one of the panels talked about St. Lawrence Seaway. Where have I seen? Now, my question is, if we have had constitutional amendments since 1962, actually, and we improvise or improve and the priority to us, why continue dancing to the tunes of people that actually thought we were of their following, not actually now coming to our own system? That's the gap of hands-on system. If not cleared out, education systems are still suffer loss, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the question of syllabus still related to hands-on system. Realize there are irrelevant subjects, relevant topics, irrelevant classes, I may say, or per se. What is the importance, for God's sake, what is the importance of 7 years of primary? What is the importance of 6 years of high school? Wouldn't someone realize what they want to be at 4 or 3 years of high school? Wouldn't someone realize or get mature actually at 5 years of kindergarten, of primary, and maybe kindergarten converted together? Why do we need to spend more years? Because realize in Uganda, if you realize what you want to be, you're already 20. You're going at 3 or 4 years of 5. By the time you work and you're maturing or you're growing or you're aging. Now, if we do not realize this as actually a very big cancer to us, we shall still face the same challenges. Motivation, it is another gap. We have lacked motivation. One, teachers are actually one of the people or one of the professions that are paid so much poorly because they are seen as irrelevant people in society. If we do not get these people motivated, the education system shall still face challenges because they do not have what encourages them to teach. So I encourage, maybe another gap that we are seeing is on motivation. Can we motivate teachers or the profession that is doing education, their job willingly, and actually facilitate more to this sector of education? Another thing is actually on affordability. Is the education system in Uganda affordable? We have realized the private sector is actually competing with the government sector today, the education system. The government sector says we are going to bring learning materials that the private sector implements. Now, when the private sector implements, the government does not want the private sector actually to run ahead of them. Now, the private sector is stepped on through higher charges of the education system. Now, if you realize that two bodies actually delivering the same service, competing for people, it means that when two elephants fight, who suffers? It is the grass. It's most likely that we the students or we the youth that are in the education system are going to suffer because this is a challenge to us. That is affordability. The education system is becoming so much expensive because of the competition of private sector and the government. Now, as I conclude, we look at the funding, we look at the budget. What goes to the education system? Is it really worth it if you realize, one, low pay, we've already seen it, education, laboratories. The other day, the education minister in charge of primary, in charge of secondary or higher institutions of learning was claiming and crying out that schools do not have laboratories, things that they expect students to be in laboratories. Now, if this is not realized on and actually focused on from the grassroots, it means we shall keep on pretending to be having things on the ground, yet we're having actually ghost implementers, ghost results, and ghost facts that we do not see on ground. Now, if we do not have laboratories, why are we teaching chemistry? If we do not have laboratories, why are we teaching physics? If we do not actually we are not having these things, it means there is a lot that needs the education system to cover, ladies and gentlemen. As I conclude, there are very vast gaps that have been tackled upon, and bringing a new gap. It is worrying, but those are the basic gaps that are in the education system, I submit.
Thank you so much, Adonia. And thank you, our panelists. The debate, I like that debate is very lively and you have really researched. I would like to get back to Anne. And I would like to give you a follow-up question. Now, from the panelists, including you yourself, we have had issues of curriculum. Most of the people submitted that curriculum is a gap in the education system. And earlier on, we also heard from you when you said that the education system does not create avenues for employment. I have seen on social media where people come out and say, 10 years after studying, I'm still wondering why I studied, about why Said moved his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar. So, Andrew, I would like to pose a question to you. Do you think there is a link between youth unemployment and education?
Yeah, so now, what is the problem in the country at large? Why do we think that the youth are not gaining the fruits or harvesting the fruits from what the education they do? Now, like I earlier discussed, I told you that we must also address the narrative of why students come to school. One, some students have not been given mentorship, for example, mentorship career. One is that what do you, at the basic status of the structure of your education, what do you really desire as a student, you know? But then you find we enter into the education system from primary, secondary, and we are mentored at university, where the repercussions of our lack of mentorship cannot be reversed back. So now, what do we perceive at the end of it? That you find a student has not desire, because you must groom a talent, or you must groom a potential career tutorship at the commencement, for example, at its earlier stage. So what happens in the long run, we find that the youth are progressing to university and get to know what they love, what they want to do at campus. But it would be better if you love what to do at an earlier stage. I'll give you a case study of China. Now, what happens in China? China, you find students are groomed at the age of 6, 5, 4. They are taught, if you want to become a footballer, you're taken to a football academy. That means by the age of 18, the kid is earning 25 million, as the one in Uganda at the age of 65 is earning less than even 500 shillings of Uganda. Now, what does that say? It says the earlier we groom our students, the better. So now, what am I trying to address in this narrative? Or why do we say that the education is to be blamed? One is that the commencement when Uganda was receiving its independence, that is 1962, the agenda was to train the Africans how to learn and write. But what was the motive behind on how to learn and write? It was to teach the Africans on how to communicate to the Europeans, or on how the collaborators would pass on information to their superiors. But then we failed to understand that the education that were being given was not solve the problems of the Africans, but it was to provide information to the white superiors. And it's more evident even up to date. That's why we find most of the Africans believe that the white supremacists, they believe that the European countries are far better off than us. But we believe that the problem with education, one, it's more theoretical in nature. You find that from primary, you won't learn the practical bit of what you're studying. From science, even some schools don't even have the illustrations. If you're studying a fish, people they study diagrams. So we lack the theoretical part of it all. Now, what happens? How does the education become the problem to the youth later on in their career achievement? One is that the youth has been seeing diagrams, the Rift Valley Canal, the connection of the wires on paper. Now, when he goes to field, that means that the youth is now experiencing new things, and then he's going to do what we call on-job training or on-job learning. What is the problem it's on? That's why you find most jobs say that we need 5 years experience. And you ask yourself, when will that kid or that child do the 5-year experience when they are still studying 24/7? So you find in the long run that it's so problematic and so hard to be achieved at the end of it all. So what we pray for is that, why don't you now start skilling? Someone wants to become a tailor, give them the skills of designing of what they desire. If someone wants to do journalism, can you try to take them to studio or academies to train them on how to do journalism? One is that you're cutting the cost burden of because you find now you're paying school fees that is so much high, you're spending on commodities that do not even add a value. At the end of it all, you find that education that is supposed to upbring or upgrade someone it's making the families more poorer. It's also creating avenues of delayed exploration of someone's potential of what they want to become in the future. So why do I say that the education system currently is a problem? It's more theoretical in nature too. I believe that why the education system in Uganda is still failing is that it has consumed much of the youth time of the students to explore or to invest in other areas. Like I said, in other education activities, local curriculum activities, one is that most of the youth are given time from morning to 3. Then from 3 to other time, that is their ample time to invest where they feel their interests are. That's why you find students who go to the UK to study, they study as they are working. One is that they are able to cater for their facilitation or earn money, and also even get skills from. So you find by the time they finish, they have connections. But what's the problem in Uganda is that you find you start to look for a job after you've finished studying. But the narrative in outside countries is that the students, as they are studying, they're also trying to invest time where they would potentially join or where they would potentially acquire other opportunities. So I believe that the education system largely is to blame. One, it's not tackling the issues or the passions of the students. Two, is that it has not changed over and over. We have, like my co-panelist Adonia said, that over and over time, people have changed constitutions, have enacted acts. But what's the problem with the education system? The system is that it has failed to adapt and revolve, whereas the rest of the world is adapting and revolving. So in the long run, we pray that and we urge that the government, that if for education to become fruitful, then they should now advocate for practical built natures, or they should go for vocational skilling. That's why you find people after senior 4, they feel that senior A level and tertiary institutions, it's a wastage of time. So the solution should be that now let's try to impact the practical bit of nature. That's one. Two, let's also address the niche or the desires of students by impacting them from the initial stages when they're being groomed from their families to the issues of when they're being transiting from one institution to the other. And also let's reduce the scale and duration of how long students are supposed to stay in school, but let's narrow it down so as they can use their youthful age at a tender age to do productive things for the country. Thank you. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew, for creating that connection between education and youth unemployment. I would like to move to Doris, who earlier on gave us an insight on the state of education of the youth. Now, you earlier on talked about online studies, which we all know that stemmed from COVID-19. Now, my request to you is comment on the lockdown of schools that has been done by the government of Uganda. Yes, Doris, we are requesting you to comment on the lockdown on schools that has been done by the government of Uganda. We also, it was March 2019 that there was lockdown that was imposed in Uganda, and then schools were closed. People all went back home. Then after that, there was opening of schools in phases, wherein we saw people go back to school and then others would come back home. And then up to now, there are certain levels like pre-primary and then primary 1, 2, and 3 have not yet gone back to school since March last year. So I would like to get a comment from Doris on the lockdown that was imposed on schools by the government. Okay, as Doris prepares, let me then shift to Samarie. Samarie, what is your comment on the closure of schools or the lockdown of schools that was imposed by government?
All right. Well, about the closure of schools, I don't think it was of any use because you realize that, okay, I believe that in schools we have rules and regulations, of which these rules are at a greater extent followed. And I believe that the only way to cap down the spread of coronavirus in school was actually by going to schools and teaching them, or even telling the administrators on how to set those rules and regulations. But even before they did, even if they didn't do that, they would still know, the administrators would still know that they were supposed to put regulations whereby they would require the students to use the masks. They would also put sanitizers. So I believe that that was the way in which they could curb the spread of coronavirus because they are more strict than they can be at home. Now, going to the homes, what happened after the closure of schools? Now, it began with a great trek that happened from schools. Yeah, people moved from schools to homes. No, you never know what happened while people were traveling from schools. So don't you think that we are actually congested? Like people were all trying to get people that wanted to go back to their homes, traveling from schools to homes. Now, from the great trek, I mean, from the traveling from schools to homes, what happens at home? Now, what happens at home is that people are idle. And what happens when people are idle? They'll actually need to meet their friends and do what? And play football or maybe interact or maybe do coachings, yeah? So what happened in the village is for us who know better the village setting, we see people doing football, we see the young kids doing football. So you never know what happens in the games that they actually play. So I believe that it was actually a way to encourage the spread of coronavirus, because while people are playing these games, they'll automatically get the spread, other than compared to schools whereby they will have rules and regulations, whereby they will whereby they will even tell students to wear masks, and if you don't wear the mask, you will be expelled or even they will beat you. That what else happens? I think that the closure of, I believe that most of the people in Uganda are below the poverty line, whereby people were required to buy smartphones, people were required to buy laptops. But now you see that the situation that was in the lockdown itself could not actually render the parents smartphones for kids. Now, first of all, we believe that in lockdown, people were not working, their parents were not working. So what happened? The schools, I think, while the other people were doing online classes, yeah, people were better off, the others missed, and the smartphones and the laptops. Then what else happens with people that actually were able to get the smartphones or even the laptops? Now, do not know the responsibility that they're supposed to guide, or even those who know that they're supposed to guide, they don't even know what the kids are. Parents are not providing their kids what they do with the funds. So in this way, they actually encourage students to use smartphones. And remember, in our setting, we were not allowed iPads days to my reporting to university. So basically, I think parents usually think that kids will actually see what they're not supposed to see, that is to say WhatsApp, and they will not be able to concentrate in academics. So that's the reason that's why they never use it to give a response. But in this lockdown, parents are actually supposed to give their kids phones. So in this way, there are the people. In this way, the government has indirectly encouraged parents to sell their own kids, because first of all, they do not know what the kids are doing there, because most of them are illiterate, and secondly, there are even those who are who are trying to survive their kids. They won't stay there all the time. Yeah, they have to do other things. So it means, yeah, your parents will go away and you will vacation. So I think the problem actually, the closure of schools was more problematic than they think. I'm not able to realize that schools are better off than homes, because in schools there are rules and regulations which are highly followed by the students for fear of being caned or even expelled. So yeah, that's what I think. And maybe something else that I can talk about that would disincentivize the other times, so the minister able to clear their loans in commercial banks, and actually the problem will go to actually schools whereby their schools again whereby they will sell them, and I know that in making chapatis there is much more they can get other than going back to schools. Whereas then another thing is about pregnancies. One will actually tell us that the parents are
Okay, thank you so much, Samarie. Let me have Doris. So, Samarie submitted that the closure of schools was more problematic than helpful in this pandemic. And she also submitted that sending students back home, telling them to learn from home, led to parents giving them gadgets, and it increased on the level of pornography. So, Samarie, let's move on from that.
All right.
Yes. So like I summarized, summary submission is that the closure of schools was very problematic. First of all, it wasn't helpful at all. It instead increased the spread of COVID. And then students were sent back home, and parents gave them gadgets to study online, and this led to pornography. So it was very problematic and did not help. Instead, it increased on the level of COVID-19. I would like to move to Doris. Do you agree with Samarie, or do you think that the closure of schools was necessary? Yes, Doris?
Okay. Can anyone?
Okay, Doris, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so earlier on, I asked a question. I asked Samarie to comment on the closure of schools by the government. So she submitted that was very problematic because students and pupils were back home. It further increased the spread of COVID. Also, people are given that increased pornography, among other things. So my question to you is, do you agree with Samarie, or do you think the closure of schools was necessary and helpful?
Okay, thank you so much, the moderator. I hope I'm clear now.
Yes, you are.
Okay, according to the first question, I will basically answer the second question first. That no, I don't support whatever Samarie talked about, because in this incident, you want to ask yourself, why were schools closed? Schools were closed because of COVID-19, and was COVID-19 effective to these people? And how effective was it? Was it effective negatively? Yes. That means the closure of schools was really an important issue to stand on with. And another thing, you look at the point that if schools are closed and the students went back home, did most of them get sick? No. By March, the students were not getting more sick. So you ask yourself, whose problem is it that these students went into pornography and all that? This is a question of two people now, the parent and the student. It is a parent's responsibility to give your child a gadget, and you still take care of how this child is using your gadget. Because even if they stayed in school, it was a first standing possibility they're going to die. Yes, schools have rules and regulations. They'll tell you wear a mask, wash your hands, sanitize, but the students are not going to do this. You understand that we have students who have been violating those rules and regulations, even when they are in school, and even when they know it is bad. So there is no way how this situation is going to be taken in when these students are in school and they can get affected. So I stand to say that it was really very, very right, very, very right for the students to go home. Where is the problem in this? The problem is that when these students went to school, what did the government do? The government opted to give these students materials to read through the districts, they opted to teach these students on TVs. They opted to use any media platform to teach these students. So what's the problem in that? The problem is that most of these other people were not capable to access these materials. So it becomes a problem in that the system of education, the management, those people up didn't plan the things very well. That is the only problem we should look at, because some students were studying, some were not studying. Even though some promised radios, but these people in village didn't access those things. So that stands to be a problem But going home, it is not a really problem, because that's why some of the students now reported, institutions and universities reported on 1st November, because they went home and at least they were secured from the disease. Okay, from Samarie's talk, I would want the moderator to remind me of the question so as I can answer it. Thank you.
The question was, do you agree with Samarie that the closure of schools was not necessary at all?
Okay, yeah. So I think I've answered that. I cannot really agree, because it was really crucial for these people to go home. Even when they're in schools, they don't adhere to some rules. So you cannot risk to put someone's life to be in school, and at the end of the day, they die. Yeah, I think that's what I can submit on it. So people going home, and maybe like the president brought it out that in January, everything will be open. At least there you can say some are vaccinated, some understand what it means because they have seen the consequences of COVID-19, and maybe they will adhere to the guidelines, get vaccinated, go to school, wear your mask, wash your hands, sanitize. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Doris. Let me move to Andrew. So Andrew, when answering questions from me by the panelists, we have had people refer to different countries as examples. Yourself, you referred to China. We have seen some refer to the US and Japan. So I would like you to compare Uganda's education system with that of other countries. How are we faring?
Thank you so much, moderator. Now, when I don't know if it's okay to first interject on the previous speaker points. That's why I want to base my argument. One is that when Uganda closed schools, because I want to begin from the picture, I was paint a status code of how Uganda is faring after closing schools due to COVID-19. You remember as well, closing wasn't bad, but then closing the school without a well-prepared format or a well-prepared agenda on how students are going to transit from the physical nature to the physical bit, comparing on how physical, because one, if you're to say that the education system of how other countries are faring with Uganda, one is that Uganda didn't prepare very well, because you know they prepared methods that were much feasible for urban centers, not for rural areas, far to reach areas, for example, like those ends in northern Uganda, those ends in western Uganda, far deep in the villages. Now, so when you compare the education system, because we are all developing countries, I think I'd like to compare the education system with, let's say, Uganda with the US and UK. One is that when the Prime Minister Boris Johnson closed the schools, what was put in place? One is that they had created an agenda on who or how students are supposed to access the services. Let's compare, what did Uganda do? When they closed the schools, they had not even prepared on how students were supposed to travel, which created the influx and even the faster spread of COVID-19. But in the UK, what they first said, yes, we have detected COVID and we are going to close on this and this and that. And they had a prepared format. But what happened? That the education system, when students traversed back home, it took months for the system to get back on pace. Now, you remember these are students that began their term, others were finally catching up to close the term. What happened is that then students created that stampede of reluctancy in the following of the academic journey. Whereas the UK, when they continued the education system, they transitioned to the online system because they had better technology, better advancements and the accessibility of the internet. What's the problem in Uganda that even the education didn't perceive as it was supposed to be? One is that there are areas that do not have electricity, accessibility of internet. That means that even if they had provided the things on internet, it couldn't work. Even the government also continued to prove the mantra of putting teachers to teach various subjects on TV. But then they did not cater for people with disabilities. But in other countries like the other countries like UK, people with disabilities were catered for and were given ample services on how they were supposed to be provided. These materials were delivered to them. What happened? Even up to date, online activities do not favor people with disabilities, for example, those who cannot see, for example, on TV, those who cannot hear, for example, those on radio. So we believe that they do not create accessibility for this. So how is our education system faring? One is that even the practical bit nature of it all, or how to implement these things, is just not happening. One is that people were supposed to do practicals, they didn't do them because we are conducting them online. But for the case of they used to try to give these equipment or materials, deliver them to their personal homes and being trained. Okay, we accept that COVID-19 may have disturbed the education system of Uganda, but then the government didn't encourage students to create other means, didn't give them take-away home assignments. For example, like how the UK did for the students who were supposed to be dismissed. They said they're going to be 4 months at home. They were given a package that was supposed to last for 4 months. Whereas the education system in Uganda, students who are sent with no package, with no further information on how it was going to go on. There was no intercommunication between the parents or the students on what they're supposed to do while they're at home. So we believe that the education system became reluctant. For example, students who are in baby class, have they been taught online? If you were to see the subjects that have been emphasized online are issues of chemistry, science, other subjects like history, other subjects like English have not been followed up, and we believe that all these subjects need a mentor. Subjects like Swahili has not been followed up. Subjects like, they only focus on science subjects, but what happens to the rest of the subjects? You see in newspapers, like for example, New Vision says that it's going to put in exams for P1, P7, other classes where they catered for. So we believe that the UK advanced the education system by catering all classes and also providing further guidance on what was happening after the schools were closed. But the case for Uganda is that the system wasn't corrected. They may say that it was an abrupt thing, but then why rush without a method on how to tackle the education system? So I believe that the problem, what happened with the problem after the closure of schools, is that the systems that were being used were unapplicable or were not even practical to be implemented in Uganda because of the issues of network, the issues of like you can see on Zoom. People don't have network, others couldn't access data. Even if the government was caring about the education system, why couldn't they reduce the tax initiatives that were put on data? You find even that they continue to also put that heavy tax burden on the students that were still studying. And why would you tax a system that would favor the education system for online system? Second, they also say that that the education system, why it became also problematic up to date, is that even communication between lecturers and teachers and students didn't happen because one, teachers weren't being paid. So the continued exposure and also payment of teachers. Okay, in summary, that even the teachers that were supposed to educate and also sensitize these students about the education and the transition were not being paid. So which discouraged teachers to keep up to the students or to go and train with them. So we believe that the government had a mantra to make sure that students were supposed to be catered for by reducing taxes on data, by providing them with services. For example, if they're in rural areas, they would have given them materials to read. Then for those in urban centers, they would read via online. Then for the cases of teachers and lecturers, they would have continued to pay them. Even private teachers, they would give them on loans so as the teachers can follow up on what students are doing the holidays. So that's why you find our education system is still problematic.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you, our panelists. We are moving to the next phase of our debate. Now, this is when we discuss solutions. So we have provided the criticisms, we have been able to point out the gaps in the education system, and we have fully interrogated the current issues with the education system. So now let us move to the solution part of our discussion. So here comes the question now, which will be answered across by all panelists. What improvements should be brought to the education system of Uganda? And I would like to start with Samarie. So Samarie, what improvements do you think should be brought to the education system of Uganda?
All right. About the improvements, since most of us talked about it being so theoretical, I think they need to start giving vocational studies. But I think last year, the other year before they closed, there was change of curriculum somehow whereby the senior ones who are supposed to do physical education as well as all the other kinds of education which are outside the theoretical education. So maybe if they can maintain that, we never know where it will lead us, but I think it is the best way to improve the education system. Yeah, basically that, because it is the main point. I mean, it is where most people, based on what they were telling us, the problems that are in the education system. And another thing maybe is about the years of study. Yeah, I showed you that Finland actually is doing well. They have effective education. Reason why? They will tell you that the other countries do waste a lot of time. Yeah, while the kid is given many years to establish themselves, and in the long run, they will actually be indoctrinated by the fact that they will see all the others doing well, when actually maybe it is not what they are good at. So I think they are supposed to maybe consider the primary level, whereby I think it has 4 subjects: English, mathematics, science, and social studies. So I think they are supposed to consider those, and that's where they will find, that's how they will find what is best for a kid. So going to secondary school, they will already know that I failed science in my primary, so I cannot continue with physics and biology, chemistry. That is just logic. It is common sense that if someone fails science so highly, they are not expected to perform well in chemistry, biology, and the sort. So I think they should reduce also the years of study by actually enabling one establish themselves in the primary level, which we also say it is wasted time, but maybe it can help somehow for someone to know what they are best at. And another thing is to encourage the parents. Yeah, because we have a saying in Nyankole, so I may not be allowed to say it on this platform, but I believe that it all begins from home. They are the primary teachers of the prime teachers of their kids.
Samarie, feel free to give us that Nyankole saying and translate it for us so that we understand.
All right. So they say that so meaning that you are supposed to show your kid the way when they are still young, because you realize a kid won't be flexible when they are the prime teachers of show them what exactly to do. They can't because we have realized that if I get close, the schools are.
Okay, that is fine. So I would like to shift to Doris. So Doris, like earlier stated, we have shifted to the solution part of our debate. So what do you think should be done to improve the education system of Uganda?
Thank you so much. I hope I am clear, right?
Yes, Doris, you're clear.
Okay, now I'm going to basically look at 2 things that are supposed to be worked on. One, it is the management. Which management? The management, starting from the Ministry of Education, going to districts, going to schools, going to prefects. Management is a crucial thing in any aspect. So I would really want to say that if management is looked at, everything is going to go on well, starting from the Ministry of Education, because if something includes in corruption or bribery, then it is not worth it. So I pray that the ministry and the country and everyone responsible looks at the management of the education, the system, whether in schools, whether in private or government, whether in institutions, whether in universities, whether in primary schools. It is going to be a better option for us to have a good thing. Another thing, the second thing I want to look at is the assessment and evaluation. How does assessment and evaluation come in? When these schools are open and people studying, teachers are teaching, are they worth it? Is someone teaching a real teacher? Does she or he deserve to be a teacher in that very school? Is he or she a good one? Because if we do assessment, here we should assess students, we should assess teachers, we should assess head teachers, like we should evaluate everyone. If they are worth it, then they have the best teacher and nothing's going to have a problem in the education system. If the evaluation is better, it is going to be a better option to have better schools and better education. Thank you so much. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Doris. I would like to bring Adonia on board. So Adonia, the question is that what improvements should be made to the education system of Uganda today? What should we do to make the education system of Uganda better?
Thank you. So the education system of Uganda better. I presume maybe the question would have been rephrased and we ask ourselves what education system should we have? Because we have a lot of loopholes in the education system, right over from management to assessment to actually follow up. What should be done? In the first place, we look at the syllabus. We need a total change and a total amendment of the syllabus, because we have very many things that are irrelevant, starting from the subjects to the courses, even to the year of study. And we have a change in the year of study. Being in school for more than 20 years is actually not important. It is not the point, but am I equipped? Realize, yes, I spend more years in school, but given am I given the basic need, the basic reason I'm in an institution? Second, management. Realize that we have a lot of loopholes and gaps in management, starting from the top to the grassroots. Now, modulator, I need to understand that for example, a mango tree, you need to realize that every part, maybe the stem, the roots, the leaves, the flowers, must be looked at as key parts of that plant. Now, if you neglect one, it means that there will be a problem and they have baked results. Modulator. Now, what am I talking about what am I meaning when I talk about management? Look at the institutions we have. Institutions, there is competition. I had said it earlier, between private and government. If we do not solve this problem, because those schools were in lockdown, but private schools were teaching their students, providing gadgets to their own students, and they were being taught. And you ask yourself, who is going to access these students? It is the Uganda National maybe examinations board. Now, who heads the examinations board? It is the government. Now, if you find there is a collision between the private sector and the government, trust me, we're not going to have a very good system. Now, another thing is empowerment. We have student leadership in institutions. Now, my all-time cry has been on student leadership. Are they empowered? We have a vacuum of leadership in Uganda. Now, if we do not follow up and actually produce a wholesome system and rule and take position in the communities they come from, we need to see the impact. We need to see the impact of the education, and we shall separate the land from the unlearned. Those that have attended schools from those that have not attended schools, because we need empowered leaders where they will make decisions for their communities. Now, if we do not teach what changes I'm talking about, can we have continuous assessment? Can we have hands-on system where we shall equip these people with skills? Can we have a good management where we shall have a sorted management of government and private schools being sorted? Now, that is my dream. That is education system, the kind of education that is able to produce a product, compete and produce actually and produce medicine. Actually, can produce a leader, can produce, because this is a wholesome development of a citizen. I said.
Thank you so much, Adonia. Before we move to Andrew, I would like to give Samarie an opportunity to finish the points that she was earlier making. Okay, Samarie, we cannot hear you. I think we'll have to shift to Andrew as you sort out your network.
Okay, hello.
Yes, Andrew, we can hear you. So we request to...
Maybe the challenge is bringing all of that.
The rest kindly. Yes. Okay. So let's have Andrew. So Andrew, what improvements do you think should be made to Uganda's education system?
Okay. Thank you so much, the moderator. Okay, what I believe that the solutions to the problems of the Uganda education system, one, is that we must tackle the problem from the root cause. What is the root cause? That this is from attendance stage from nursery. What should be that? We should set up what we call mentorship schools or academic schools. For example, what I mean by academic schools, that if someone is best, or if a person is interested in music, for example, let them be taken to a mentorship school for music. Let them be taken to an academic school that trains in music, so as that we shorten the time for that person to be in education arena, but also make it more easier for them to pass through that and also go to the other agenda. Then we should also encourage the government to do what we call capacity building. Now, capacity building is where we strengthen the structures and also institutions so as to enable the easy accessibility of these services. One is that the problem with Uganda is that we have these services, but the problem is that, for example, laboratories in some areas, far-reached areas, those schools, secondary schools and universities don't have the laboratories for students to do practical subjects, which makes the implementation of the syllabus very hard. So what do we believe and what's another solution? We believe that also that parents, even though they have an influence over their students, they should also allow their students or their kids to make personal choices on issues of personal career and also personal growth in the education system. Then another solution to our education system is that teachers should not go with a collective whole of students, then should sit down and also have interpersonal discussion with the students they teach on how they have well understood the subjects. Then we believe that the issue of assessment should not only be based on exams, but the issue of assessment also should be balanced on the potential of different students. One, they can use exams. Two, they can use what we call practicals. Three, they can use what we call views on how they can express themselves. We also believe that also the issue of education system, we should entirely use English. As the president said, we can also traverse the education system and other avenues into our local languages, in which best the natives and also students can learn. So another thing is that we believe that also, even though we are training students, we should also create a social market for the job opportunities to students. You find that very many students finish studying, but what next? They don't have the job opportunities. So we believe that how can they create job opportunities is that by scaling down the retirement age, in which we believe that if the retirement age is put at 40, that means that we shall have an ecosystem of rotation and implementation of the job opportunities for students. We also urge the government to also give loans to students who have creatives or have innovations, create innovation loans and also schemes for students to invest and also do what we call a narrative of job creations and job seeking. That means that if a person has created an industry that does an upgrading of agricultural materials, that means that if he was employing one person, if he's given a loan scheme or a loan grant, that means that he has a capacity to employ 5,000 youth. That means that we are now narrowing down the issue of unemployment, and which we believe that unemployment has caused a lot of insecurity. And also that means that when we increase the employment capital opportunities, that means that parents shall be encouraged to sensitize other fellow youth to join education, because most people believe that studying is a wastage of time. So they believe that, but if we create avenues for job opportunities and also make sure that we mentor and also guide students in the issues they feel they are well versed with or in things they feel they are well best to understand more, then we believe that the education system is good. As I come to a conclusion, the system of Uganda should not only change on the word paper form, because they say that they're introducing the new system. We believe that as they are changing the system, they should also create capacity building opportunities or capacity building avenues in which we believe that the narrative shall cut across not only favoring the urban centers, but also favor the rural-based side. So in the long run is that one, that even the urban kid and also the rural kid have the same basic structure of education, the accessibility is easier, and also the implementation and also the way of innovation is also implemented in all areas. That means that we shall not have education inequalities, where we find that when we are doing the education scaling, we find that the Kampala is best has done the exams other than Northern Uganda, Western Uganda. So I believe that education should now be prioritized and also put at the center stage in the budget committees where they pay more money more to teachers, for example, in German. And in the long run, we find that they have been given the opportunities to continue and also study. Other than that, let us stop the issue of theories, but also encourage practical bit of nature of our education system. I beg to submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. And so we are now moving to the last phase of today's debate, which is the part for concluding remarks. So each panelist is going to have an opportunity to give us their concluding remarks. We are going to start with Samarie. Samarie, in 2 minutes, please give us your concluding remarks.
All right. Well, it is so unfortunate that I was unable to give what I was supposed to give. But basically, what I wanted to tell you is that we shall consider all the stakeholders in the improvement of our education system. That is to say, the students themselves have a role to play. The parents themselves have a role to play. That will sound like a senior woman, but they're supposed to teach their kids morals, because when they have grown up, when they grow up and go to schools and acquire all that sex education, they won't be able to change because they are already in their adolescence or even beyond that. But when they are told that sex is bad before you are married, while they are still young, they'll still know. That's why kids in America are more intelligent and can realize the things that are really not good for them. Then another thing, the government also has a big role to play, whereby I expect the government of Uganda, now that they acknowledge that education is so important, they are supposed to increase the money allocated to the education system, because there is much more needed in schools, especially the UPE and the USE schools. Then the last remark is that, learn as though you are to live forever. That was Indian philosopher Mahatma Gandhi. So we have theories in schools. We have much more to learn. As in future, we all have much more to learn from different people. I mean, every second you get an opportunity, please utilize it. Learn as much as you can. That's the only way you will be able to develop yourself. You'll be able to pay back to the society, because that is the main purpose of education. That's how we are going to be able to reduce the crimes in our society, because if everyone is rich, we shall not have cases of theft. So basically, that is it. Love to learn and learn as though you're to live forever. That is all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Samarie. Let us now hear from Doris, your concluding remarks.
She's not on the call.
Oh, okay. Then Andrew, give us your concluding remarks.
So okay. My concluding remarks is that one, the government should accept that there is a problem in its own system. But then what should be the policy? The policy should be that parents should now advocate for skilling or vocational skillings, where there is practical and also the theoretical nature. But then, as we advocate for a new education system, we believe that COVID has affected us greatly. But then we have to transit and move on. So we believe that they should prepare in advance. In such, if any other pandemic comes on board, it finds us well prepared with systems that can enable our system to continue despite of any challenges that may come on board. Then lastly is that although students believe that education is the only key to success, but then they should also be taught that not any education serves us as a prior opportunity. They can also invest in what they feel they love most. For example, you may find you're studying law, but then you feel you have other avenues like activism. So we believe that in the new system, the education system, the government should create enough time. The students, after studying, they can get there enough time to do other things. For example, if you're doing lectures from morning to midday, then from midday to evening, you have the other time to go and work or to do internship or to volunteer. Because one, youth should be told that money is not the only objective to become successful, but then perfecting your career and advocating your knowledge in skilling, then that means that at the end of it all, it will pay one day. Then the government should create innovation hubs to facilitate ideas and also modernize the ideas for student upbringing. Lastly, we believe that the employment market is still low. So why do we advocate for? We advocate that the employment market should be increased, one, by reducing the retirement age, two, by also advocating for loans or schemes for personal youth development. For example, that you can give a loan to a student who has an innovation hub, who wants to do a skilling factory, that factory will create more avenues and employment opportunities in the long run, and that means that it creates an avenue for income distribution. And then lastly, the education system in all other countries or regions should be balanced, and implementation should be made by skilling teachers amicably so that we don't have education inequalities in regions. I beg to submit and have a blessed evening.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your concluding remarks. Let us have concluding remarks from Adonia.
Thank you so much. Now, the question on education system of Uganda, it has been a very good discussion. Now, how am I going to conclude? You must realize that once Mahatma Gandhi was asked, what does your country need from education? Education, remember, is two-way, formal and informal. And we must appreciate the fact that informal education has been neglected, and we actually think that formal education is the way to go. But realize that parents must understand that we need informal education appreciated in the status quo modulator. Now, what is informal education? Have our girls been empowered? Have our boys been empowered? Before I go to school, do I know what I'm likely to get actually face outside the community, to the community that I'm going to? So if I'm educated informally, it means that I am ready to face the new education system. That is the formal education system. What else do I conclude with, ladies and gentlemen? Now, we're talking about the education system. Can we empower our youth? Can we empower our youth? Because youth have not understood the fact of education. They have appreciated education in the other way, where I will go to class, from class I will go to an office and work. But can we empower the youth to discover what they can do best? Realize that I am a law student, but I can do some other skill that I can actually do for a well-being, not particularly, but as a result of being exposed through education. Now, what do we need to do? We need to focus on actually giving skills to the youth. That is the basic thing that I'm calling for. Let us put aside giving them knowledge and going back, sending them to the community. But can we equip them with the knowledge and skill? Can we give them the skill? Because that is where the competition is now running to. Can we equip these youth with the ability to make something, to look for something, but to make something out of their education? And there we shall be sure that the education system can be ready to produce people that can compete on the international market, on the international.
Okay, thank you so much, Adonia, for our closing remarks. We have come to the end of our debate for today. I would like to extend my appreciation to the panelists from Bishop Stuart University. I would like to appreciate you people for doing justice to this topic. My appreciation also goes to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing this wonderful debate. And our topic for today was the foundation of every state is the education of its youth. What is the state of Uganda's education? We are ending here, and thank you so much, our viewers, for watching. Thank you. Bye.